Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please join us in singing Jai Radha Madhav prayers. It's not connected for some reason. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvardhari, Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvardhari, Yashodanandana Brajjana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Brajjana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvardhari, Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvardhari, Yashodanandana Brajjana Ranjana, Yashodanandana Brajjana Ranjana, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Yamuna Tira Vanachari, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna हरे कृष्णा डियर डिवोटीज, आप सबका स्वागत है, आप सबका अभिनंदन है। हरे कृष्णा देवी।
हरे कृष्णा डियर व्यूअर्स, वेलकम एवरीवन। श्रीमद् भागवतम क्लास में हम इस वक्त स्टडी कर रहे हैं कैंटो 3 चैप्टर 31 और जीवा तत्व प्रभु जी ने कल हमारे साथ बहुत ही ब्यूटीफुल इंसाइट शेयर किए इस चैप्टर से। किस तरह लिविंग एंटिटीज, we are caught up in this cycle of birth, old age, death, disease and we engage in fruitive activities, लेकिन उसका एक परमानेंट सॉल्यूशन है, एक वंडरफुल सॉल्यूशन है। किस तरह से वी कैन एंगेज इन भक्ति योग, क्योंकि इट्स वेरी पावरफुल, राइट प्रभु जी? आपने कल बहुत सारे पॉइंट्स बताए कि भक्ति योग में कितनी शक्ति है और किस तरह से हम अपना मन सदा भगवान के चिंतन में लगा सकते हैं। तो आपने कल पार्ट 1 किया था एंड देयर वर लॉट ऑफ टीचिंग्स फर्दर यू वांटेड टू शेयर, सो वी आर डूइंग दिस पार्ट 2। और इसी के साथ जो भी व्यूअर्स, जितने भी व्यूअर्स आज हमारे साथ ज्वाइन कर रहे हैं, सभी का बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। स्वागत है जी, भक्ति जी, हिमांशु जी, नित्या जी, रितेश जी, बैसाखी जी, हरिनारायण जी, सुनील जी, तपस जी, नीरुदल जी, अमित दत्ता जी, रश्मिता जी, शुक्ला जी, गीता जी, मोहित जी, थीहा जी, हरि बोल। और उन सारे व्यूअर्स का खास अभिनंदन जिनके नाम हम अभी ले नहीं पा रहे हैं। तो डियर व्यूअर्स, आप अपने क्वेश्चंस टुवर्ड्स द एंड ऑफ द क्लास आधे घंटे में प्रभु जी के पास अपने क्वेश्चंस प्रेजेंट कर सकते हैं। कमेंट्स एरिया में अपने क्वेश्चंस लिखिए, आई विल रीड आउट टू हिम। सो प्रभु जी, प्लीज गो अहेड विद द क्लास। हरे कृष्णा।
Hare Krishna dear devotees, please join us for Mangalacharan prayers as well as Guru Pranati. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirye Shavatam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shamana Kirtanaha Hridayantasto He Bhadrani Vidunoti Suhasatam Nashta Prayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatir Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtikhi. Hare Krishna, Guru Pranati. नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी निति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषा शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So again, in this particular chapter, we looked at various aspects. So let's look at the background. Here, Lord Kapil, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is preaching to his mother Devahuti, who was very anxious after her husband Kardama Muni left for the forest. And so the son has a responsibility to preach to the parents and help them further in spiritual advancement. And who's the son? He's none other than, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Kapil, who's not different from Krishna. So again, that's another factor that sometimes people, they get confused when they hear about Lord's incarnations. So all Vishnu Tattvas, they are referred to in a singular fashion. So when we talk about so many Vishnu Tattvas, जब हम भगवान कृष्ण का, भगवान राम का, नरसिंहदेव भगवान का, वराह देव का, कुर्मा अवतार जो हैं और वामन अवतार हैं, सारे अवतारों के बारे में जब डिस्कस करते हैं, हम लोग सिंगुलर में क्यों रिफर करते हैं? They are all the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because they are all Vishnu Tattvas, right? We living entities, Jiva Tattvas, we can be, we are limited. Qualitatively, we are one with the Lord because all the qualities that we have received it from Lord. But quantitatively, we are very different. There is a gulf of difference. And Srila Prabhupada used to give two very common examples. One was that you take a drop from the ocean. So qualitatively, the drop has the same quality, it's salt water, just like the ocean. But ocean is magnanimous, it's unlimited, जबकि drop जो है वो limited है, right? जैसे एक बूंद होती है पानी की, समुद्र से ली है, तो उसमें भी वही खारा पानी है, समुद्र में भी खारा पानी है, लेकिन क्वांटिटी में बहुत डिफरेंस है. सेकेंड एग्जाम्पल ही यूज्ड टू गिव वाज लाइक अ गोल्ड रिंग versus the gold mine. So gold ring is limited while gold mine is vast, magnanimous. So Lord, he has all the qualities in unlimited forms, fully, potent, while we have limited, qualities. Paurushyam Nishu in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says that I am the ability in man. So whatever abilities that we have received are basically received from Lord Shri Krishna, and those abilities are limited, right? I can lift one book, maybe 5 books, maybe 10 books. But then when it comes to 100 books, 200 books, 1000 books, we can like start thinking this is, we'll take turns, right? We'll make multiple rounds. But Lord, all these planets are floating in the sky just because he desires so. All these material universes, they are appearing from his pores. Bhagwan ke jo pores hain, unse material universes, every time he exhales out, these material universes, they come out. Every time he inhales, they all merge in him. So again, because he is unlimited, he can do such wonderful acts. So what is not possible for the Lord Shiva? But we have limited possibilities, right? So from that perspective, we should understand that when we are talking about Vishnu Tattvas, they are non-different. That's why sometimes people, in the beginning, yes, there are many doubts. And having doubt is not a bad thing. But once those doubts have been cleared and still having continued to act otherwise, adversely, that is something that we should save ourselves from, because then we may be committing offenses. हमें अपराध करने से बचना चाहिए. Again, difference between sin and offenses is कि sin जो होता है ना, जब आप करते हो, when you act it out, that's when you get the reactions. But जो offense होता है, वो अगर सोचा भी जाए ना, तो it actually has a reaction. So that is also very important. इसलिए नाम अपराध से जब हम लोग चैंटिंग करने जाते हैं, तो हमेशा नाम अपराध को, जैसे पद्म पुराण में दिया है, that we should not commit any offenses to the holy name, also not to commit any offenses towards Vaishnavas. And devotees, they always want to think positive. Why? Because negativity pulls us down, while positivity helps us raise high. जो हम लोग अच्छे विचार रखते हैं, शुद्ध विचार रखते हैं, सबका भला चाहते हैं, these are the things that we have to constantly endeavor. तनादपि सुरीचेना तरोरपि सहिष्णुना अमानेन मानदेन कीर्तनिया सदा हरि. So one should think of oneself more humble than the grass on the street. अब जो घास होती है, उसके ऊपर कोई चलता है, तो घास उसको ये नहीं बोलती है मेरे को क्यों कुचल रहे हो, right? Because that's the humble state. So we have to be more humble than the grass on the street, and more tolerant than the tree. Tree को संस्कृत में बोलते हैं वृक्ष. वृक्ष का मीनिंग है one that is meant to be cut down. तो ऐसे में जब but the tree, it provides us so many things. It provides us fruits, flowers, leaves, and it also provides us shade, for the travelers. And at the time it is cut down, क्या होता है? People make various kind of furnitures. They even print books. Without the trees, it's not possible to print books. So again, trees, they are providing service when they are alive, and even when they are dead, they have continued to provide service. So as Vaishnavas, as devotees, we have to develop these qualities, that we have to be more tolerant than the tree. And amanina, not expecting respect from others, manadina, but ready to give all respect to others. Now appropriate to the individual position based on our advancement, right? So that is also very important. As we advance, we realize that we have to give respect to everyone. Madhyam Adhikari is making distinction. Uttam Adhikari is not making any distinction. He is freely giving holy name and preaching to everyone to take to Krishna consciousness. And Srila Prabhupada would step down to Madhyam Adhikari level so that people would take to it. Now in this particular chapter, Lord Kapil is preaching to his mother, and he had been glorifying, जैसे पिछले chapters में हम लोगों ने देखा, he had been glorifying the devotional service. Then he showed and again preached his mother about how to execute devotional service. And the previous chapter, as we saw, how he covered those 3 important sections, were the first 5 verses in the previous chapter, Canto 3, chapter 30. He talked about the time factor, how just like a cloud is carried away by the wind, similarly the living entities, when engaged in various materialistic activities. Materialistic activities means they are looking at fruitive activities, because all activities they are expecting some remuneration, some fruits that they want to enjoy. Now this propensity itself is sinful. Now that's when people hear it, they are surprised, because this is where they do not understand that actually we have the right to perform our duties, but we are not entitled to the fruits of our labor. A very simple example acharyas give is like, a laborer, is a laborer has been hired to work on a field by the landlord. So after the laborer has worked on the field, he has been doing the agriculture, farming and all that, and then at the end of the day the landlord gives him some remuneration. But now the crop that has been, that has come from the land, laborer cannot claim that crop, right? Because that is what belongs to the landlord. Similarly, we don't even deserve to have the human form of life, but by Lord's mercy we receive this human form of life, right? And when we receive this human form of life, it is meant to be engaged in Lord's service. So we have prescribed duties because of the influence of the three modes of material nature. What are those three modes of material nature? Mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. Sattva guna, rajo guna, tamo guna. And we, have swadharma. Swadharma is our constitutional position. Jivera surupoya kishne nityadas. So that वो हमारा स्वभाव है, right? So Jivera Swarup, right? That is हमारा स्वभाव है, that we are eternal servant. So either we decide to serve directly Lord Krishna, or we are indirectly serving Lord Krishna by serving Maya. And what is Maya? This body is Maya. That we are seeking sense gratification, that's the delusion. And in this chapter, Lord Kapil says that even the opposite sex, that who looks attractive, that is actually representative of Maya. That is Maya, causing us to fall down from our position. And we also learn that we should not engage in activities that is just useless labor. Dharma sunishtita pumsam vishvakshena kathasuya no padyate yadi ratim shama evahi kevalam. If whatever activities we perform, and how can we perform? There are three ways, three media we have by which we perform all activities. Mind, मन में जो विचार करते हैं उनसे. Body, ये जो शरीर है, means again we use our senses, कर्मेंद्रियां use करते हैं, 2 hands, 2 legs, the tongue that vibrates for speech, and then third one is speech, right? Mind, body and speech. So this is very important. Anus and genitals, of course, those are the other two. So the 5 karmendriyas, and we should engage all our activities in serving the Lordship. And if we don't use it that way, we use it for fruitive activities, so that we can enjoy the fruits of our labor. Then actually it has a reaction to it. Pious activities will have pious reaction, impious activities will have impious reaction. Now the strange thing is, both of them will cause rebirth, and we have been talking in this chapter about rebirth. So in chapter 31, we also, in the previous chapter talked about that until old age, how the living entity is engaged in various activities, and when the last moment comes, right? This is the state as we hear. Hare Krishna. Can you hear me? Is the volume okay? So again, here, this is the last stage. This is in chapter 30 of the previous chapter. We hear as how a living entity, even though a pious living entity may have been doing very religious, all the rituals and everything, but not taking to devotional service. Now sometimes people are surprised. How could that be? Now we'll be diving deeper into this topic in the next chapter, chapter 32. But here, today we want to focus on the prayers by the living entity in the womb. So when, and it is meant especially for the living entity who has gone through Andhata Mishra. So again, Andha means like that is blind, blinding means again it's a dark place, and Tama, we understand that's about ignorance or darkness again. So it's like blinding darkness. We have no, and we living entities have to face various kind of hellish punishments in that case. And even following religiosity for sense gratification it becomes part sinful, because the second part of trying to enjoy the senses instead of serving the master of the senses, Lord Rishikesha. So this is not a state we want to get to. And this cycle is not what we want to get onto. And after all these hellish conditions, we are assigned a specific body in the 8.4 million species. So we want to be very, very careful not to go through that phase. And now, when we get an opportunity by advancing through different yonis, finally coming to the human form of life, 8.4 million has 4.4 million, which is 4 lakh varieties of just human beings. Now we talk about Homo sapiens when we read biology, and they only consider one type of human beings. But Shastras, the scriptures reveal that there are 4 lakh varieties, just categories of human beings. Not the count of human beings, categories of human beings. And we get, in one of the category, we get a body. Now, it's very interesting that from Andhatamisha, as we are getting this body, as soon as the baby comes in the womb, right? So similarly, comes in the womb and is developing. So after the 6th month, the baby remembers, but only the fortunate soul in the womb of its mother can remember. So not every living entity in the womb of its mother has the potency to remember, because those who are engaged in pious activities, engaged in devotional service, they are the fortunate ones who remember. And we talked about the example of Shukdev Goswami. So Shukdev Goswami, he had heard Srimad Bhagavatam twice. First, he had heard it from Lord Shiva, and when he was, Shuka also means parrot. When he was parrot hidden in the tree. Second is when he was in the womb of, Srila Vyasadev's wife. So at that time, Srila Vyasadev was reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. So again, he heard it second time. So when it was time for him to come out, he would not come out, right, from the womb. And it's very interesting that even there's a natural process. Maya uses the various life years to push the baby down. But he was so powerful that he could even counteract the effect of Maya. He could, keep away the effect of Maya by engaging in devotional service. So he was saying that I don't want to come out. And this is also part of the devotional service. Again, the influence of devotional service. यहाँ हम भक्ति की शक्ति देख रहे हैं कि a living entity, how the living entity is praying in the womb and can even contract. For 16 years, he did not come out. And by Lord Krishna's arrangement, Srila Vyasadeva actually sought Lord Krishna's mercy. And so he was able to, for 4 moments, he was able to, 4 pal, he was able to remove the effect of Maya and said that now, my dear son, come out. And as soon as Shukdev Goswami, he came out from his mother's womb, he ran for the forest. So we talked about that as well. So again, and previously we have discussed this Shukdev Goswami birth pastime at length. So you can look at those, videos to understand more. So similarly, when the living entity is put into a hellish condition of life, the living entity is praying to only the fortunate ones get an opportunity to remember their 100 births. So they pray to the Lord that it will never again commit sinful activities and have to be put into the womb of repeated birth and death. So this is a prayer living entity is making in mother's womb, right, when in the form of a baby. And in the hellish condition within the womb, the living entity is in a fearful state, very much afraid of being born again. Why? Because in the womb of the mother, Maya's influence is not there for fortunate ones. But as soon as the baby comes out, immediately Maya catches it. So it gets influenced by the 3 modes of material nature. So when he is in full life and good health, he forgets everything, all that painful state, all the tribulations, all the biting by the worms in the womb of its mother, the tough position of being arched body, very difficult. Srila Prabhupada says that if a grown-up man is made to place in that position as a baby is in the mother's womb, that man can't even survive a few seconds. Forget about few months, and baby is there for so much long, again, over 9 months. So again, he forgets everything. And what does he do? He again and again commits the same sins for which he was put into that horrible condition of existence. So this is where the Ferris wheel effect seems to be coming in as well, that we are constantly repeating the cycle, and we should not be repeating the cycles. Now, the word Chalachanaravindam, right, is where there is a reference given directly to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who actually walks and travels upon the surface of the earth. So when Lord appears, he appears by his own arrangement because he is the master of the material energy. Devi he Esha Gunamai Mama Maya Durate. It is my material energy, Lord Krishna is revealing in Bhagavad Gita. So, just like Lord Ramchandra, he actually walked on the surface of the world. So again, he walked on the earth. And then Lord Krishna also walked just like an ordinary man. He was walking in Vrajbhumi and playing his flute, taking cows for, along with the cowherd boys, and to the jungle and to the forest and so forth. Again, also to the Giridhari Parvat. So again, Govardhan Parvat and so forth. One of other important is that Lord, when he appears by his own desire. Nobody can force the Lord to appear, right? That's also another thing. In Shastras, it is revealed how Lord will appear. Now, Kaliki, we know 427,000 years from now is when Kalki avatar would appear. But it's very strange that people, they are creating so many Kalki avatars at current times. Trying to just, use the emotions of innocent public and bewildering them. And, it's like a blind leading a blind. अंधों में काना राजा से कहते हैं, but यहाँ तो अंधे ही हैं. Means again, and they are driving innocent public behind them. They are going to hell and they are dragging all this innocent public along with them. And sometimes people would ask, why would such a case happen? And and people would, they are being misdirected. So Srila Prabhupada gives an example of there is cheater for the cheated, right? So the people who we have responsibility, we have accountability on our shoulder to understand about devotional service, to understand the strength of devotional service. And so if we don't take that responsibility and if we use mental speculation, right, मन गढ़ंत जो भी अच्छा लग रहा है उसको अगर follow करेंगे, then it becomes very difficult for us to follow. And sometimes even in devotional service, things like that happens, right? And so we have to be very, very careful and put it in the right context. So there is one example that comes to mind is where once there was a guru, he was giving a pravachan to his disciples, and there was a donkey who was braying in the background. So he asked his disciples to go and tie that donkey at a distance, in a farm. So the disciples, they did that. Now, after the spiritual master left this world for his next destination, one of the disciples, he was giving the class, trying to preach, other students, but he was missing something. He was like, why am I not getting the same feeling that when we used to get when our Guru Maharaj used to preach? So he said, oh, I know why. Because he used to have a donkey tied to that farm, and that donkey would, be braying all day long. So he asked some students to go get a donkey and tie. So this is where it's like twisted understanding, right? So we should not do that. Another example that Srila Prabhupada's Srila Prabhupada used to share was that a mother, was marrying her daughter off, right? So, and her daughter, she was not getting the same feeling. She was like, there's something missing here. And then she remembered, oh, when I was getting married, there was a cat that my mother had kept, and she had put a basket upside down on the cat so that the cat is inside the basket. I have to do the same thing. Now, why her mother did was because there was a cat running in the whole, pandal arena where the marriage was going on, and that was causing a lot of disturbance, right? And cats are considered not so nice. Means again, they cross the path, and there's so many, inauspicious sayings around the cats. So then she says, oh, I need to get a cat and put a basket upside down, on top of the cat. And see, this is where the twisted feelings come in. So we have to understand, yes, these kind of things, they sometimes lead to. And sometimes people, they get attracted to these things, and there is a similar thing that sometimes happens. Srila Prabhupada, that's why he set up the whole arrangement. He said, don't change anything, keep it as it is. But then there is a Western disease also. He said that people have the tendency, because it feels nice, they would introduce new rituals. Now, sometimes even great sannyasis, right, means they share these in a very funny manner, and they help us realize that we have to understand things in right perspective. So in Bombay Chapati temple, they used to perform Pushya Vishek, right? So His Holiness Srila Radhanath Maharaj, he was sharing in one of his lecture. So Pushya Vishek, the devotees would bathe the Lord with the rose petals. So another of his godbrother who was visiting, and so they were having this conversation, and he was like, this is so nice that you do this on Pushya Abhishek. He's like, yes, that's what Pushya means, right? So his godbrother said, no, actually Pushya means water. You do the water bathing to the Lordship, not this, flower. And, Radhanath Maharaj was sharing in his lecture, His Holiness was sharing that, sometimes Pushya and Pushpa are so close that you don't know, and you by mistake use the other one. Now the trend continues because it makes everyone feel very nice. So first the deities are given a bath with water, which is Pushya, and then later on followed up by Pushpa. So it's an add-on where everyone becomes more attracted. So again, we should accept that is favorable to devotional service, because people were getting attracted by this Pushpa Vishek so much, the petals, the rose petals, that it continues because it's getting people attracted to the lotus feet of Lordship. So that it became a very ritual, and many temples have taken up this practice. But we have to understand it from the right perspective, that in the beginning people want to engage, and this is very fruitful. So here, from that perspective, we have to understand that the living entity may be in very difficult condition, but when the condition changes or circumstances changes, we have the tendency of forgetting the miseries that we were facing, right? And Lord, when he appears by his own will, by his internal potency, as Lord Krishna is confirming in Bhagavad Gita, Swam Bhyami Atma Mayaya. So he appears by his will, by his internal potency. So Yoga Maya is participating, Mahamaya is staying in the back, right? So in the body, right, our body that we have received this, yantra, the machine provided to us by the material energy, the super soul, Paramatma, is also sitting there, and we as living entities, the Jivas, are also sitting in the same body, as it's confirmed in the Upanishads, right? And they are sitting as friends. So again, but one is suffering. We living entities are undergoing suffering because this material world is dukkhalayam ashashvatam. There is the absence of distress is what we consider as happiness. That's also another thing. We don't even realize the true happiness unless we realize the strength of devotional service. जब तक हम भक्ति योग की शक्ति को नहीं समझेंगे, तब तक हमें आनंद क्या होता है उसकी परिभाषा भी समझ में नहीं आएगी. We cannot even understand what true happiness is. Otherwise, we just keep thinking that mirage that we see in the desert is happiness, and we are running after a mirage, engaging in fruitive activities. And हम लोगों ने discuss किया है कि बहुत सी बार that this is the tendency of a donkey, of an ass, that is always trying to do things, and that's why they are referred to as fools, mudas, right? And so when we take to devotional service, when we understand the potency of devotion and to understand the potency of devotional service, भक्ति योग की शक्ति को समझने के लिए सबसे पहला स्टेप क्या है? Chanting of the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. What happens is, when we are pleasing the Lordship, when we are engaging, so we are asking for the service. And when the service comes, we should be open armed, right? Accepting that service. Yes, sometimes it happens that we already have so much service that if somebody is putting more service on your lap, it becomes difficult to balance out all the services, right? At that time, we try to identify if someone else can take on the service, provided we have sufficient service. We should not do over endeavor in material world, but over endeavor is actually the greed. Lolyam is a potency that we should be looking for in devotional service. Lolyam in material world for fruitive activity is very bad, but the same thing becomes very good when it comes to devotional service. Yet at the same time, if it's breaking up back and we cannot perform devotional service tomorrow or day after because we have taken too much today, then we have to ask for forgiveness and pass it on. But we should always try to see that all our time is engaged in Lord's service. So that should be the focus. And when we do that, when we engage in devotional service, Lord Krishna says that we come under the influence of his internal potency, not his external potency. Mahatmanastu mam partha devim prakritim ashaya bhajanta ananya manaso gyatva bhutadim avyayam. So, bhajanta ananya manaso. So, all our mind is engaged in serving Lord Shri Krishna. Bhaj is much bigger than puja, right? Puja worship is one of the element in bhaj, which is devotion service. So, bhaj govindam, govindam bhaja moolamate. Even Shipa Shankaracharya, right? He is, instructing, and we accept him as Acharyas, all the Vaishnavas, that he is telling his final conclusion is that we should continue to perform devotional service unto Lord Shri Krishna. But then Mayavadis misunderstood that aspect. They said, oh, aham brahmasmi, if the scriptures are saying that I am Brahman. But Lord is Parabrahman. They don't understand sometimes that there is Brahman and there is Param Brahman. Param Brahma, Param Dhama, Pavitram Paramam Bhavam. So Arjun is revealing that Lord Shri Krishna, you are Param Brahma, you are Brahm Brahman, right? Vadanti tattva, dastatvam yajnanam avyayam, brahmeti paramatmeti bhagwan iti shabdate. So the learned transcendentalists who understand the absolute truth accept absolute truth in three forms. Brahman, effulgence, which is like the sunshine. Paramatma, the super soul in our heart, just like the sun globe. And Bhagwan, like Vivaswan or, Hiranyagarbha. So again, just like this, so that's the analogy of, Vivaswan, the sun god, and the sun globe, and sunshine. So similarly, there's Brahman, there is Paramatma, and then there is Bhagwan, Lord Shri Krishna himself. So in such cases, what happens is the living entity is in agony and forgets. So asango here, aham purushaha, the living entities, we are actually liberated, right? And this material contamination is a temporary state. And our actual state is that we are all liberated. And liberation is achieved, this temporary state is removed by taking to Krishna consciousness. And by taking to Krishna consciousness, we can begin from the point of surrender. And what are the 6 limbs of surrender? Again, if you know the 6 limbs of surrender, please share in the comments. And by taking to surrender, right, Bhagwan Krishna खुद फाइनल जो अपना इंस्ट्रक्शन देते हैं भगवद गीता वो क्या कहते हैं? सर्वधर्मां परित्यज्य माम एकम शरणं व्रज अहम त्वाम सर्व पापेभ्यो मोक्षयिष्यामि मा शुचः. So again, सर्वधर्मां परित्यज्य, give up all of the varieties of religion. Maam ekam sharanam vraja. So just surrender unto me. So we have to take that sharanagati, right? That Godspeed we get when we take surrender at his lotus feet. And the 6 limbs of surrender, anukulyasya sankalpa, pratikulyasya varjanam, rakshishyati te vishwaso, gopatitve varnam tatha, atma nikshepa karpane shadvida sharanagati. So these are the 6 limbs of surrender. Anukulyasya sankalpa, accepting everything that is favorable to our devotional service. So even that Pushpa Abhishek after Pushya Abhishek, right? The Abhishek by the flowers is favorable because it develops our attraction towards the lotus feet of Shri Shri Radha Krishna. So again, we should accept everything that is favorable. Pratikulyasya varjam, we should reject everything that is unfavorable to our devotional service, seeking the fruits of our labor. That is unfavorable. Atma nikshepa karpaniya, taking, having that understanding that Lord will provide us protection. He is going to provide us protection in all circumstances. Gopatitva varnam tata, accepting the guardianship of the Lordship. Tvameva mata cha pita tvameva bandhuscha sakha tvameva vidya dravidam tvameva sarvam mama deva. Everything that we have and we get in our life is coming from the mercy of the Lordship. Karpaniya, becoming humble. So we talked about like how we can be humble. Just like the third verse of Shri Shastakam, Taradapi Sunichena, Tarurapi Sanjuna, Manina Manedina, Kirtaniya Sadahari. So that is favorable. To do Kirtaniya Sadahari, we have to be humble and tolerant. So again, being humility. Atmanikshep, surrendering everything, all our activities, dovetailing everything in the service of Lordship, to please the Lordship as He desires. Anukulena Krishna Anushilinam. So when we engage in this manner, very small steps we have to start with. It all starts with the chanting of the holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Now sometimes people may put arguments, right? They may put forth an argument saying that why we have been put under the influence of this material energy by the supreme will of the Lordship, right? So this is also explained in Bhagavad Gita. Lord Krishna is saying, Sarvasya chaham hridasannivishto matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha vedeshcha sarve rahameva vedyo vedant kridveda vid eva chaham. So, Sarvasya chaham hridasannivishto. I am sitting in everyone's heart. Matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha. From me comes smriti, remembrance, jnanam, knowledge, and apohanam, forgetfulness, right? So even the forgetfulness of the living entity is due to the direction of the Supreme Lord. Why is there? Because the living entity wants to enjoy, has a desire to enjoy apart from Lord Shri Krishna. In the spiritual world, Lord Krishna is always the center of attraction. When living entity at some time became envious of Lord's position and said, I want to be in the center of attraction. But if it remembers that Lord is always the center of attraction, that is not possible. So Lord even allows the living entity to forget that Lord is in the center. And so the living entity can try to lord over this material nature. He makes an arrangement apart, because in the spiritual world, everyone is serving Lord Shri Krishna. So an arrangement needs to be made, right? And because of the statistical consideration, it is not possible to give every living entity or whole universe. So that's why false ego is given. So we actually have a virtual universe within ourselves, in our own mind, that we create. And we always, in forgetfulness, Hare Krishna, thinking that everyone is serving us. So again, a living entity wants to forget about the Lord, gets in this state by Lord's arrangement. So independence is given, right? Because love is based on independence. So once someone is loving you without any restriction, without any, exchange, like a trade, right? Just with the mood of loving is giving, and by the mood of caring and giving, then that is true love. So it implies, that one can use it properly or improperly. So everyone is independent. We have minute independence, while Lord is Swarat, so he is completely independent. Even so independent that even to generate these universes and so many living entities, he doesn't need the female counterpart. He is the Purusha, he is the enjoyer, and independently, without having any female consonant companion, he can create all the living entities. Yet at the same time, Radharani, Yogamaya, they are his internal potencies. So they expand. Now, Stri word means the one who expands, right? So Radharani, just like Lord is expanding through so many Vishnu Tattvas, she is also expanding as his consort. So that is Lord's arrangement, and this is a loving exchange she has, that she wants to always be accompanying the Lordship. And when, so again, this independence that we get, right? So that we can love, remember the Lordship with love, with affection, with attraction, or we can forget and become envious and jealous of his presence, or sometimes neglect his presence. Atheists are even worse, because they neglect the even presence of the God. So again, this is a dynamic feature, it's not a static feature. So this misuse of the independence is because of the influence of Maya. So when a living entity is actually in perfect knowledge, he understands, the living entity, we understand that the Lord is the supreme worshipful object and that we are his eternal servant. Jivera Surpure Krishnera Nityadas. So without this knowledge, the living entity, what would the living entity be engaged in? He will be engaged in material activities, and that is called ignorance. So the definition of ignorance is forgetting about the knowledge of our relationship, that sambandha we have with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and engaging in activities seeking to enjoy in this material world. So that is ignorance. And one who wants to be materialistically satisfied, right? Materially satisfied, enjoy the fruits of one's labor, or who wants to lord over this material nature, the Lord gives the opportunity, right, to forget his service and to engage in so-called happiness. So that's not true happiness, as we have discussed. So-called happiness of material activities. And similarly, when one is frustrated lording over the material nature, understands that, okay, this material world is dukkhalayam and shashvatam, constantly frustrated, but he's very serious about getting out of this material entanglement, then the Lord from within gives him the knowledge that he has to surrender unto him, and that is the definition of liberation. Teshamevanukampartam aham ajnanajam tamaha nashamyatma bhavasto jnanadipena bhasvata. In Chatushloki Gita, the 4th verse, right, refers to this particular in Bhagavad Gita. Tesham eva anukampartham, right? So Bhagwan ki anukampa hoti hai, his causeless mercy. Aham ajnanajam tamaha nashamyatma bhavasto. So whatever is the darkness that we are in, this material world, thinking that this material world is for our satisfaction, if we have that, then if we are serious to get out of the entanglement of this material world, Nashyami Atma Bhastu, Lord says that I destroy that darkness. Agyan, right? Ignorance is darkness. And that is destroyed by the knowledge of lamp. Nashyami Atma Bhavastu Jnana Dipena Bhasvata. So again, when there is light, of course there cannot be darkness. And Krishna Surya Sama Maya He Andhakara, Jaha Krishna Taha Nahi Maya Radhikara. So Lord, he destroys for his devotees and he enables us. So again, so similarly, we actually understand that a person who is engaged in material activities, there is a word in this particular chapter being used as Kripana Dhihi. Dhi means intelligence and Kripana means miserly. So a conditioned life of person is for persons who have miserly intelligence. Right opposite of this is Udar. Udar means very magnanimous. So a Brahman is called Udar because he utilizes his human intelligence for spiritual realization. He uses that intelligence to preach Krishna consciousness for the benefit of the public, for others, and therefore a Brahman is referred to as magnanimous. So we should always be feeling very obliged to the Supreme Personality of Godhead for giving us this opportunity of this rare birth, a human birth, which is like a perfect boat to cross over this material world. So sometimes the prayer of the child in the womb, like the child is praying, the baby is praying in the womb of its mother, that may be questioned by some atheistic people who don't even believe, agnostic people. How can a child pray in such a nice way in the womb of his mother, right? And everything is possible by the grace of Lord. Understand that as Lord Kapil, he is revealing, the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself is revealing, Bhagavan is revealing because he knows what is the arrangement. He is the one under whose supervision all this arrangement is done. So this child is put into such a precarious condition externally, but internally he is the living entity. He is not yet influenced by the 3 modes of material nature, right? And the Lord is also there as Paramatma. So by the transcendental energy, the absolute nature of the Lord, everything is possible. And the fortunate child, not every child gets this opportunity to pray to the Lordship, only the fortunate child who has taken to devotion, who has taken to pious activities, who has taken and developed good qualities, a way, not taking shortcuts, but carrying out the duties as prescribed duties in the previous lives. That child in the womb of its mother realizes Lord's superior position and also its own superior position above Maya. And so he's distinguishing from other bodies, understanding that in the animal bodies, they are lower. Animal bodies are lower because what is the purpose of animal body? What are the four activities they engage in? Eat, sleep, mate, defend. So the complication of material life is because of uncontrolled mind and uncontrolled senses, right? That's the distinction between an animal and a man, because an animal cannot control himself or his sense of decency, whereas human beings, we have a sense of decency and we can control ourselves. So in Brahma Samhita, again, it is very nicely said that all the arrangement is going on because of Lord's mercy. And He is Sarva Karan Karanam. He is the cause of all causes. Also, it has been revealed that we get all the facilities and all the arrangements by Lord's mercy. So we should be using this higher responsibility, not live like an animal, but also understand, what is the purpose of this life? Why am I here? Why is there suffering in this world? Atato Brahma Jigyasa. That is the inquiry, right? What is the purpose of this life? And then we talked about Sambandha Vidheya Prayojana. While the baby in the womb of the mother is constantly praying to get out of this material world, to get out of that precarious situation, in the troublesome situation the baby is in the womb. But then realizing that as soon as it comes out, it will be entrapped by Maya. So the baby doesn't want to come out, but because of the arrangement by Maya, the air forces it to come out, right? And also it may be questioned that if how the child can be full Krishna conscious within the womb of the mother without any paraphernalia with which to execute Krishna consciousness. Now Srila Prabhupada in the purport reveals that it is not necessary to arrange for paraphernalia to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu. One does not need any material arrangement to cultivate Krishna consciousness. One can cultivate Krishna consciousness anywhere and everywhere, provided he can always think of Krishna. The Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, can be chanted even within the abdomen of one's mother. So within the womb of the mother, the child can chant the Maha Mantra. While it is a prayer asking for devotional service, it is also devotional service. And we talked about this in another example. So where, there is a nice story. A beggar wanted to see gold. He had never seen gold. So he went to the king. He came to know the king has a big treasury. It's full with gold, golden ornaments, utensils and whatnot. So he said, I want to see gold. So the king said, you're a beggar. Why do you want to see gold? The beggar said, I've never seen gold. I want to see gold. So the king called his treasurer. He said, why don't you take this beggar and show him gold? When you open the treasure house, then inside you can show him gold. So the treasurer understood what the king has said. He took the beggar along with him. They climbed some stairs, and then the treasurer opened the gate. And the beggar asked, where is gold? So the treasurer said, this is all gold. He picked up goblets that's made of gold, a plate that's made of gold, a necklace, golden necklace, and so many things. And now the beggar was shocked. He looked back. The stairs they had climbed were also made of gold. So until he was told that what gold is, he didn't realize that the steps were gold. So similarly, when we chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, while it is asking for service in a repentful state, in a humble state, in a state of gratitude, when we are calling out to the Lordship to please engage us in His devotional service, this is also devotional service. So it is very important for us to understand the true essence. And what is the conclusion of the child's prayer? That at the moment that the air is pushing it out, the child is praying, please let me remain in this precarious, troublesome space in the womb of my mother. Although it is very miserable, it is better not to fall victim of Maya again by going outside. So this is the tendency we human beings have, that when we are in tough situation, we remember the Lord and we are praying to the Lord, right? But as soon as our condition improves, we forget about those conditions and we again engage in all those kind of previous sinful activities. So this forgetfulness is something we have to give up. We have to constantly remember that by Lord's mercy we have come out of that precarious condition, and we have to again, by Lord's costless mercy, come to a position where we can perform our devotional service very nicely and with attraction, with absorptions, with attention, with attachment and affection. We should serve the Lord in a humble state of mind, being tolerant more than the tree, ready to give all respect to others without expecting any respect for ourselves, and seeking only to please Shri Radha Krishna. So that is the importance that we should understand, that only by the Shakti of Bhakti Yoga, right? Bhakti Yoga की शक्ति से ही हम लोग इस जीवन को सफल बना सकते हैं. And what is that definition of success? That we can get love of Godhead. So that is the goal we should all be coming out of. And मन को सदा भगवान के चिंतन में लगाएं, so that we can always मन मना भव, always remember मय्येव मनादस, always think of me. Again, so many times in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna is saying, and he's also revealing that mind can be our best friend when it's engaged in devotional service, or it can be our worst enemy when it's engaging us in fruitive activities. So we should select the right path so that we can go back home, back to Godhead, and become free of all these miseries of life and attain eternal happiness, absolute happiness. Hare Krishna. So this is what we wanted to today cover, some of the important lessons from this chapter. Gandhra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Bhagavad Pad ki jai, Ananta Kori Vaishnav Vind ki jai, Nitaya Go Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.